A low hum of electrical current met the first responders as Engine 42's lights swept the darkened courtyard of the Crestview Heights apartment block. 10 units stacked in two-story symmetry, each featuring narrow hallways that branched like veins from a central foyer. The call came in at 2:17 a.m. Possible electrical fire. Second floor. Heavy smoke. Battalion Chief Ramirez toggled his mic. Voice calm but brisk. Alpha 4. We're on scene. Assume search mode for any occupants. They assembled at the open stairwell door. The threshold already stained with drifting smoke so dense it glowed in their helmet-mounted light beacons like milk in tea. A single window on the second floor flickered an ominous orange pulse. Firefighter Chen led the advance team. Helmet cam live streaming into command. Beams of light cutting arcs through the smoke-choked corridor. Hoses uncoiling across stacked stair treads. Inside, visibility collapsed to arm's length. The heat was immediate, enveloping gear, pressing against masks like a living force. Chen's voice crackled in everyone's ear. Second floor landing clear. No victims at stairwell. Hallway to Unit 202 is zero visibility. Proceed with caution. But smoke swirled, eddying around columns, teasing at the edge of disorientation. In the haze, doors looked identical, pale metal, scuffed numbers. Then came a sudden, unexpected bolt of motion. A brindle Pitbull burst from an open apartment, no door swing heard. No alarm tripped. Eyes glowing ruby in thermal overlay as he darted straight past Chen's partner. Elbow nudging him toward the west wing. Chen's senses flickered. That wasn't part of the drill. The dog stopped at the corner, turned, and barked. Not a friendly household bark, but a staccato alert that echoed like a brass rimshot. He tapped the sole of Firefighter Lewis' boot with a paw, then took off again, back to the entry of apartment 206. Command asked, "Do we have an animal on scene?" Chen exhaled into his SCBA mic. Affirmative. Brindle Pitbull, about 50 pounds, acting agitated, seems to be leading us. The officers exchanged looks. Standard protocol frowned on stray animals in a fire zone. Yet the dog's insistence cut through the panic like a lifeline. Captain Morales edged forward, axe in hand, and called, "Follow that dog." Chen's partner dropped the hose for a moment, slung it across his shoulder, and motioned the others to trail. Through the gauzy gray, he glimpsed the dog's silhouette sliding behind half-open door of 206, then paw prints on the carbonized threshold, leading into the pitch-dark interior. A shudder of fear ran through the crew. No thermal signature beyond the doorway, too thick. Too hot. Morales signaled as if reading the dog's intention. "We clear the hall." Then entry. They kicked the door inward. A wall of heat slammed them. Chen's helmet cam steamed over. Yet beyond the threshold, precisely where the dog sat poised, chest heaving, lay an overturned recliner. Its occupant slumped unconscious, smoke curling from singed hair. Without hesitation, the Pitbull loped forward, nudged the man's arm. Firefighter Lewis snapped his scabbard knife out, slicing the man's jacket cuffs, slinging an arm behind each of Chen and Lewis' backs, and together they hauled the resident clear, dragging him down the hall to the landing. Atlas, so the tenant later called him, hovered alongside, ears perked, tail stiff, as if verifying each step. The rescue unfolded in a single breath. Second floor hallway, through choking smoke, back to fresh air on the landing, where paramedics already prepared oxygen masks. Then Atlas did something startling. He bolted back through the door. Returning into the inferno, Chen shouted, "What are you doing?" The dog vanished. Without waiting, Morales followed, deep into the murk. A moment later, they reappeared with no additional victim but a half-pressed door to 208. Movement behind the crack. A panhandler's cat, trapped and terrified, streaked past Atlas into lighter air. Atlas barked once, proud. By 2:38, all residents accounted for. Fire under control. Dog safe in Chief Ramirez's arms. Helmet cam footage captured every beat. Atlas's calm under crisis. Single-minded drive to each hazard point. Silent choreography with the crew. Thermal imaging review showed his body temperature is stable. His paw prints overlaid onto building blueprints highlighted his instinctive path to life signs. Even when radios and cameras failed. Weeks later, at the Firehouse Awards Gala, Chief Ramirez pressed Atlas a custom badge, Honorary Fire Guide K9. Fire Commissioner Pratt, reviewing helmet cam clips, praised him, "The bravest smoke maze navigator we've ever seen. Natural guide in corridors where no man or machine could see." Journalists labeled him, "Smokehound," a nod to bloodhounds that track scent and to the fiery haze he pierced. In months that followed, the department introduced Maze Guide Protocol, integrating civilian-owned canine units into building search operations. Handlers underwent training to register their dogs with station dispatch. Residential volunteers opted in, equipping floors with pet access slots in fire doors. Smart building retrofits installed ultra-wideband breath sensors that, when triggered by canine paw knocks or barks, illuminated exit paths in dense smoke layers. Pilot programs in 3 cities reported a 27% reduction in search time and 0 firefighter entrapments in multifamily dwellings. Atlas retired after 2 more critical rescues, one in a chemical smoke training scenario. Another guiding lost evacuees through an underground parking garage turned wind tunnel by backdraft. He spent his golden years at the Fire Academy's K-9 Pavilion, greeting recruits, napping in the sun and gracing the Academy's official portrait wall. Firefighter Lewis, now a captain himself, included Atlas's story in every new recruit's orientation, a reminder that heroism sometimes comes on 4 paws. Guided by nothing but courage and conscience. And in the smoky hallways of every apartment block retrofitted under the Maze Guide Protocol. When flames flare and visibility drops to nothing, the memory of one Pitbull named Atlas lives on in the bark-activated strobes, in the mesh ceramic paw prints embedded in hallway tile, and in the hearts of those who learned to follow where a dog dared to lead. In the months following Atlas's retirement, Crestview Fire Academy poured resources into formalizing the Fire Guide K-9 training curriculum, a multi-tiered program that transformed bold family pets into bona fide lifesavers under flame and smoke. At the heart of the curriculum lay the smoke maze drill, a practice labyrinth of corridor-sized shipping containers rigged with variable density fog machines, smoke hatches, and movable wall panels. Under careful supervision, each trainee dog and handler team spent hours learning to navigate shifting passageways where visibility hovered below 18 inches. Trusting nothing but scent and subtle command cues, handlers first taught their dogs to recognize the smell of live human breath, carbon dioxide signatures warmed by body heat, and to mark those spots with a brief sit signal. The dogs wore comfortable harnesses equipped with padded leg loops that clipped into magnetic rails mounted atop modular wall panels. This smart door pet slot system allowed dogs to unerringly open doors simply by pressing their weight against a sensor, unlatching fire-rated gates without risking human hands near hot handles. Instructors watched through infrared cameras, mapping each dog's preferred search pattern. Some fanned out methodically. Others sprinted point to point following stronger scent hotspots. Every successful find earned the team silent visual affirmation, a green laser dot projected on the wall. Then an electronic ping on the handler's wrist display. As the dogs mastered the maze's internal topology, they progressed to the live fire recovery exercise. On a closed training tower floor, clouds of synthetic smoke simulated flashover conditions, while gas torches behind protective screens generated heat gradients up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. There, handlers relied on thermo-canine mapping techniques. Each dog's harness carried a small thermal camera module with onboard processing. As the dog moved, its body acted like a mobile sensor array, and the module stitched together real-time heat maps, transmitted via mesh network to command tablets mounted outside. Chief Ramirez described the output as watching the dog paint the fire's outline in glowing orange and red, enabling incident commanders to see exactly which walls were superheated and where unseen victims might be trapped against backdraft threat zones. Instructors emphasized one crucial principle: dogs must always have an escape route. Training arcs included emergency recall drills where a single whistle from a remote speaker would command the dog to retreat instantly. Testing that recall even as oxygen masks cascaded and spotlights strobed to mimic failing power. Atlas himself had pioneered one variant, when he encountered a downed ceiling beam too hot to pass. He barked, 2 short alerts, then pivoted back to the team, guiding them to a safer entry elsewhere. That precise two-bark pattern was codified as the Atlas alert, taught to every cohort that followed. As seasons turned, more stories emerged of Fire Guide K9 teams in action. In a midwinter apartment blaze on Birchwood Lane, Lieutenant Ortiz and her Belgian Malinois partner Biscuit used the smart door pet slot to ferry an elderly resident through 8 locked doors in near-zero visibility. The thermal canine map highlighting a small wind tunnel draft that had grown into a hidden pocket of flame. Elsewhere, in a high-rise fire on East 23 Road, a Labrador mix named Ember picked up the smoke plume of a trapped toddler only because her handler had earlier calibrated Ember's harness microphone to recognize a child's cries as a unique audio signature. Partnerships between fire departments and PB4C's research wing led to a standardized canine integration manual. Now part of the National Incident Command System Compendium, Atlas's final legacy miracle unfolded on a sultry August evening 2 years ago. A transformer blew at frequency substation X17, igniting a fast-spreading panel fire in the basement of Maplewood Towers. Dense blackout smoke billowed upward through stair shafts and shafts, overtaking the first teams dispatched. Chief Ramirez, on site within 3 minutes, sent in the blaze team alongside newcomer handler Garcia and his German Shepherd Cross. Echo, AtlasNet Class 620. Trained in both search and rope descent techniques. As the team descended below grade, white-hot embers popped around them. Echo moved calmly beside Garcia's side, maneuvering through steel grates, paws marking a location where thermal mapping indicated a human heat signature wedged beneath fallen conduits. Gasp pain. The crew found a young maintenance worker whose rescuers had assumed already made it out. Echo's firm sit signal at that precise spot had guided them. The worker credited the dog with saving his life. Hospital staff later noted smoke inhalation symptoms but no permanent lung damage. Echo's image soon adorned the station's wall, and the story vaulted into trade journal case studies of integrated canine sensor response. Today, in the main bay of Crestview Firehouse 42, Atlas's original badge and Casey's framed thermal map printout hang side by side, a reminder of where it all began. Next to them, a bronze paw print plaque lists every Fire Guide certified K9, Biscuit, Ember, Echo, and Icarus among them, each name etching Atlas's pioneering steps into communal memory. For Marisol Vega, now Deputy Chief of Community Outreach, the most profound legacy is not the technology, the pet slots or the thermal harnesses, but the trust between handler and hound. At the dedication of the AtlasNet Memorial Scholarship, she spoke of Atlas's final years spent teaching Icarus, who would carry on the lineage of listening. She recounted the night Atlas waited outside every training module, silently urging newcomers forward, his eyes a beacon in the smoke. Concluding, she reminded new recruits and their dogs that heroism is a dialogue, bark and beep, heart and code, when we choose to hear one another. And so, in every pre-drill briefing, when new eyes scan the fire tower horizon, a silent echo remains. Presence before catastrophe, summoned from the simplest of acts. A dog's bark in the dark, transformed by human ingenuity into a pathway through smoke, a guiding light in chaos, and a story that will keep unfolding long after any one dog has returned to rest. Beyond the controlled confines of the smoke maze drill, Fire Guide K9 teams began pushing into new frontiers of rescue, urban collapse scenarios, chemical hazard deployments, and high-rise evacuations where every stairwell became a gauntlet. In the abandoned subway station mock-up at the National Fallen Firefighters training campus, handlers worked alongside AtlasNet engineers to retrofit canine harnesses with gas detection sensors. When methane pulsed through vent shafts or acid fog simulators drifted across platform gaps, the dogs didn't merely sit or bark. They led teams along safer side corridors demarcated by low-power LED strips synchronized to their sensors, tracing a canine breadcrumb path that human rescuers could follow even after vision and radio signals failed. A landmark exercise took place in the heart of downtown's Glass and Steel Canyon, where a high-rise fire tower was reconfigured to simulate stair-shaft black snow conditions, zero visibility, falling embers, and spitting sprinkler heads. There, handler Lieutenant Reyes and her Belgian Shepherd mix Blaze demonstrated the next evolution of Maze Guide protocol. dynamic elevation search. On the chemical hazard front, Fire Guide K9 units partnered with hazmat platoons to tackle toxic gas releases. In a sprawling warehouse set up by the Department of Environmental Safety, Handler Corporal Lou and his Labrador mix Ember navigated clouds of non-lethal chlorine analog, pausing at precise leaks invisible to sensors until Ember's paw taps triggered overhead exhaust fans and marked the breach on the hazmat command grid. Engineers dubbed this workflow olfactory vent automation, a system now quietly installed in hundreds of refineries and chemical labs where the slightest molecule of irritant could stun unprotected lungs. Even as tactical uses expanded, the community dimension deepened. Fire stations hosted pups and protocol open houses, where families engaged in smokehouse crawls alongside live demonstrations of dogs opening smart door pet slots, coaxing children through training mazes in full gear. Local elementary schools invited AtlasNet teams to introduce students to sirens, sprinklers and, internationally, the Diesel Carter Center's outreach fostered partnerships in seismic. And yet, through all this technological bloom and geographic spread, the core ethos remains startlingly simple. Listen where others cannot. Then lead where others cannot see. Last summer, at the opening of the Fire Guide K9 Memorial Garden, rows of cherry trees were planted, each tree corresponding to a dog that had fallen in service. Beneath each heartwood trunk, a cast bronze paw print, first to find light in the smoke. Handlers, firefighters, and survivors alike walked the winding path, pausing at memory stones, sharing stories of courage that began with a single bark in the dark. As twilight deepened across the city skyline, firehouses everywhere glowed like embers ready for the night's call. Yet a new kind of readiness had taken root, beyond boots and hoses. The station doors now opened for teams of handlers and their fire guide dogs. In the bay at Engine 42, matte black boots passed sleek canine harnesses rigged with multi-sensor arrays, carbon dioxide detectors, ultrasonic microphones, thermal imagers, all networked through the AtlasNet mesh. Firefighters fingered gloves that could toggle camera feeds on their dogs' chest-mounted modules, while command officers tailored incident action plans around canine mapped heat signatures and bark print verified alerts. On a humid mid-August night, Battalion Chief Ramirez tested this system during a full-scale drill in a condemned textile mill. The air simulators pumped in dense smoke laced with inert gas, plunging corridors into murk. Handlers released their dogs at the entry point. Blaze, trained for high-rise stairwells, padded forward, mapping each landing's temperature gradient. Ember, her Labrador partner, detected pockets of synthetic CO lurking near supply rooms. Their paw prints appeared as glowing breadcrumbs on the overhead tactical map, guiding teams to victims in immediate distress and directing fans to vent dangerous gases before relay runners raised the nozzle lines. At the command post, a live feed spliced canine helmet cams with static surveillance, giving incident commanders a 360-degree perspective, where people had been, where flames would grow, and where the next advance needed extra caution. When the sirens blared the drill complete, the aftermath debrief rippled with newfound conviction. Engineers from the city's Smart Infrastructure Division proposed embedding AtlasNet nodes into future subway expansions and underground malls. Architects from the High-Rise Safety Council sketched out staircase designs with integrated pet channels in fire doors, so dogs could open deadbolts without jostling human mechanisms. The state legislature, seizing on compelling data that showed a 30% drop in firefighter disorientation events where Fire Guide K9s were deployed, quietly earmarked funds to expand the program into rural volunteer departments. Meanwhile, the Diesel Carter Center convened its first global symposium on canine augmented fire response, attracting delegations from 82 countries. In a hall outfitted with dynamic floor-based fog machines, Chief Ramirez delivered a keynote. He recounted how a brindle Pitbull named Atlas had reshaped doctrine, and how every subsequent dog had extended that legacy, guiding crews through a nuclear plant simulation in Finland, hauling life preservers to flood-trapped families in Mozambique, and even leading medical teams to hillside wildfire survivors in Patagonia. Each story wove into a tapestry of trust between two species whose partnership transcended gear and code. At a roundtable discussion, Rowan Cho unveiled the next frontier, neuro-lattice integration. Working with neuroscientists, her team had begun decoding the electrical patterns of canine decision-making during high-stress rescues. Early prototypes of a flexible neural interface promised to transmit a dog's intuitive sense of danger instantly into command center dashboards, bridging the final gap between instinct and instrumentation. Ethics panels buzzed over the implications. Could humans ever truly understand a dog's perception? Or would we risk reducing sentient partners to mere data points? The prevailing answer affirmed the guiding ethos: technology must serve compassion, not supplant it. In the quiet that followed, Marisol Vega, now Deputy Chief of Special Operations, stepped to the podium. She spoke not of hardware or firmware, but of faith. In dogs that answered sirens as their own. In people who learned once more to trust animal companions in the thick of crisis. And in communities fortified by that ancient bond. When she concluded, the audience rose, but the thunder of applause felt more like a collective heartbeat, steady, resonant, alive with possibility. Long after the lights dimmed and the fog machines powered down, the program's impact rippled outward. Insurance carriers offered premium credits to households that registered their pets for basic fire guide workshops. Urban planners wove canine rescue lanes into new civic center blueprints. Cultural festivals celebrated man's best friend not just as pet or protector, but as guide through the labyrinth of danger itself. Back in Crestview Heights, on a night when the only flames were candlelit vigils for retired heroes, Marisol and Chief Ramirez visited Atlas's Memorial Garden. Lanterns swung in a gentle breeze across blossoms that had grown taller than any recruit. A lone oak bore a plaque, "Here rest the barks that saved us." They stood in silhouette as a new handler arrived with Icarus, now a grizzled veteran himself, harnessed and ready for the next shift. Icarus nosed at the grass, then looked up, ears angled toward something unseen. The world beyond waited, fires to fight, people to save, edges yet undiscovered, and wherever smoke might gather. AtlasNet's lineage of listening would be there, dogs and devices, instinct and invention, side by side through every dark corridor until every last heartbeat found its breath and light. Under a sapphire dawn that painted the city's high-rise windows with saffron ribbons, the Fire Guide K9 program reached beyond the urban core into the labyrinthine alleys of the old quarter, where narrow brick corridors twisted between tenement gates and ancient courtyards. Here, the architecture did not lend itself to hoses and ladders, but it did offer a mesh of hidden recesses, vaulted kitchens, and shadowed stairwells. Exactly the terrain where a dog's nose and fearless heart could turn deadly confusion into coordinated salvation. In these historic blocks, handler teams set up the next evolution of Maze Guide Protocol, known colloquially as the Cobblestone Initiative. Firefighters who had once found themselves stalled by centuries-old stonework now moved in sync with their dogs, slipping guide ropes through specially engineered, pet chain, eyelets recessed into archways. When a blaze ripped through a ground-floor bakery, casting flames against the low-hung eaves and igniting wooden ceiling beams, the dense, acrid smoke seemed to cling to every surface. Static sensors lost their bearings among the kiln's residual heat. But the Fire Guide Terrier Pit Mix, Luna's successor Nova, threaded through the chaos with unwavering focus. Each bark sit Nova offered beneath precarious ceiling arches mapped a safe passage for crews hauling hoses and stretchers. As if the dog had memorized a blueprint of the ancient stone. Flames that might have felled firefighters into hidden pits instead licked only the edges of safety corridors luminous in Nova's wake. These operations underscored a profound truth. Fire Guide dogs did not simply follow protocol, they became its pulse. In the coastal fishing towns battered by sudden offshore gales and stoked dock fires, Labrador Mix Riptide, teamed with harbor captain turned handler Sophia Reyes, mastered the tidal ingress drill, navigating boardwalk planks slick with salt spray and resealing emergency hatches before crews arrived. Each bark print leaving a coded timestamp that allowed dispatch to track evacuation progress with second-hand precision. In the desert sprawl outside Phoenix, German Shepherd Mix Mesa served as the centerpiece of the heatwave response, leading paramedics through smoldering arterial boulevards where pavement burned feet through synthetic sole boots. The dog's harness sensors had been tuned to warn of asphalt flash heats beyond human perception. And each pause marking alerted ambulances to detour around burning ghost cars and abandoned RVs, saving precious time for heatstroke victims. Back at the Diesel Carter Center, neuroscientists pored over data captured during these varied missions, marveling at the consistency with which canines distilled multi-sensor chaos into singular commands. The latest neuro-lattice integration prototype had decoded patterns in which dogs adapted to wildly differing environments: brick corridors, ocean piers, desert boulevards, yet each team's synergy across cultures, climates, and catastrophes pointed to one immutable constant: a dog's instinctive empathy for human vulnerability. It was empathy more than odor that guided them. Their years of living within households and learning human rhythms transformed them into biosocial conduits, capable of anticipating needs before alarms sounded. In the quiet aftermath of these deployments, dozens of communities commissioned bronze paw print plaques fashioned as miniature reliefs depicting local fire guide champions. Neighborhood watch groups adopted guardian canine roundtables, monthly gatherings where families learned to interpret their own pets' subtle signals and integrate simple command routines into everyday safety drills. The result was a grassroots network of citizen handlers, ready to support full-scale fire guide operations when smoke-veiled official sensors and first responders needed local eyes and noses on the ground. Even so, the guiding principle never strayed: technology must magnify, not replace, the bond between human and canine. For every advanced harness or smart door pet slot, the program preserved a simple creed taught to every handler: maintain eye contact and trust the dog's first concern for life. In training academies, as grizzled veterans passed callers to fresh recruits, they spoke of Atlas's single decisive bark in a suffocating stairwell, of Blaze's mapped stair shaft rescue in simulating black snow, of Ember's chemical leak vent automation that kept a warehouse from becoming a tomb. Those stories carried forward not as relics but as living instructions, etched into every new harness calibration and every ceremony where handlers swore to listen. Truly listen, when dogs spoke in barks and body language. Now, as cities worldwide stitched AtlasNet protocols into every fiber of civic safety, from firehouses to flood zones, from smoky subway depths to solar-fired desert boondocks, the world itself felt more like a labyrinth illuminated not just by sirens, but by a chorus of canine guardians. In that chorus, every bark rang out as an invitation: come follow me through the smoke. And countless firefighters, bound by duty and grateful for companionship, took each step with paws and boots echoing in synchronized cadence, ever ready to turn the labyrinth of peril into a pathway toward rescue. Together, as dawn broke over the rugged coastline of Nova Scotia, spray from Atlantic swells drifted through open bay windows of the province's newest fire rescue academy, part of a joint initiative between the Canadian Forestry Service and Diesel Carter's Fire Guide Global Division. In the vast atrium, handlers and canine partners from half a dozen countries gathered under a sculptural installation of mirrored paw prints, each reflecting the name of a legendary fire guide dog. It was here, in this light-filled space smelling of cedar and salt, that program architects unveiled the continuum of care doctrine, an ambitious framework binding performance metrics, canine welfare, and community integration into a single cohesive charter. At the heart of the doctrine lay three intertwined pillars. First, holistic handler dog wellness insisted that a dog's physical resilience, cardio fitness, musculoskeletal integrity, respiratory health, be matched by psychological support, including on-call behaviorists and mandatory rest cycles after every major deployment. No dog would ever be asked to return to the maze until a veterinary and behavioral assessment green-lit, fit for duty. Second, adaptive environmental mastery codified the notion that every locale, whether a bamboo-thicketed wildfire zone in Indonesia, flooded shantytown in Bangladesh, or oil rig floor in the North Sea, required bespoke training modules. Teams collaboratively wrote local hazard supplements that layered region-specific protocols atop the core maze guide and hazmat drills. Third, community co-stewardship pledged ongoing outreach, rather than retirees fading into the sun. Handlers rotated into schools, town halls, and elders' councils, ensuring that rescue dog guardianship strengthened the social fabric rather than existing as an isolated elite. To inaugurate these pillars, the Academy staged a celebration of instruction that rolled from a forest fire ignition simulation beneath red maple stands, through maze drill overlays in a half-submerged cathedral crypt, and finally into an underwater rescue scenario in the adjacent harbor's training tank. In the fire simulation, handler teams wearing heat-resistant exosuits followed their terrier partners through flames that roared to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Geiger counters mounted on the dogs' harnesses relayed data on radiant heat exposure, while handlers monitored each canine's ECG in real time. When a controlled, backdraft breach occurred, the terriers froze, tail low, then barked twice, Atlas's original alert pattern, instantly triggering emergency ventilation vents and sonic pulse dampers that choked the blast back to simmer. Trainees watched in wonder as bark-triggered valves snapped open, proving a dog's voice could literally reshape fire dynamics. Next came the crypt, in waist-high water glistening beneath Gothic arches. Handlers and their Belgian Malinois partners donned neon-trimmed wetsuits. Underwater breathing regulators hummed while dog-mounted sonar pings sketched chamber layouts on screen. A lead Malinois paused at a submerged vestibule, nose quivering at a crackling audio source hidden behind masonry, a trapped diver's rebreathe alarm. Without hesitation, the dog surfaced, bark bubble echoes transmitted through waterproof mics, and crew in wetsuits followed the sonar path to extract the decoy victim. Observers noted that the dog's ability to combine scent, hydrosonic mapping, and command sync recall far outpaced human-only dives. The final act arrived at the harbor tank, where a robotic, maritime platform lay partially submerged, signaling a hazardous material spillage scenario. U.S. Coast Guard and Australian Marine Rescue officers watched as a Labrador Shepherd cross named Tide trotted across the platform's slippery deck, harness sensors humming as they tracked tiny aerosolized droplets of non-toxic chlorine analog. Tide's measured sit signal at the platform's starboard hatch marked the leak's epicenter. Immediately, remote-controlled buoys released absorbent skirts around the hull, and a robotic crane gripped a valve control lever via Tide's paw-point guidance. A spontaneous cheer rippled through the assembly gallery when the valve clanged shut. Observers felt the moment stretch like a horizon turned calm. Between these grand drills, delegates convened expert panels under vaulted glass pavilions. A firefighter from São Paulo described how his Portuguese waterdog partner navigated dangled scaffolds atop a collapsing viaduct. A researcher from Tokyo shared diffusion models showing how canine-guided ventilation could reduce smoke toxin concentrations by 42% in subway carriages within 90 seconds. A veterinarian from Nairobi outlined emerging zoonotic disease protocols ensuring that fire guide dogs remained healthy even when rescuing wildlife caught in floodwaters. That evening, as embers from a controlled bonfire danced under the midsummer dusk, Marisol Vega took the stage for a fireside address. She reflected on the journey from Atlas's first bark in Elmhurst Towers to this global confluence of pause and purpose. She challenged attendees to embrace the doctrine not as static policy, but as a living testament that when we commit to listen, every crisis map unfolds differently, guided by four paws, bound by two hearts. Her words were met with hushed reverence, then crescendos of applause. In the weeks that followed, the Academy's graduates deployed across 6 continents. The Cobblestone Initiative spread to UNESCO heritage zones, protecting centuries-old temples in Kyoto and cliffside villages in Tuscany. The tidal ingress drill informed flood rescue canine units along the Mekong Delta. The heat wave response even reached Arctic research stations, where husky Pitbull hybrids warned about infrared solar panel fires in solar flare storms. Back home, Atlas's Memorial Garden in Crestview Heights bloomed brighter than ever. Lanterns strung between cherry trees at twilight, and pawprint plaques glinted beneath sensors that recorded every footstep and bark echo within the sanctuary. Families strolled the winding paths, children pressing fingers into bronze paw impressions as if sealing a vow to heed every canine cue. In the Guardian kiosk at the garden's gate, a small digital scroll displayed real-time AtlasNet activations worldwide, teal pulses drifting across the globe like constellations in eternal guard. Ultimately, The labyrinth of smoke, water, and stone that once challenged every rescue operation had become a canvas for human and canine partnership. With each new command bark and sensor mesh handshake, the Fire Guide K9 tradition deepened its roots, an unbroken line from a single dog named Atlas to a global network of guides. Each one proving that presence, and the willingness to trust it, could light a path through even the darkest maze. As autumn's first amber light filtered through swaying maples, the Diesel Carter Center's headquarters hummed with an almost festival energy. The annual Fire Guide Global Summit had convened delegates from more than 120 agencies, fire chiefs, marine rescue captains, building code officials, animal behavior scientists, each accompanied by at least one canine envoy. In the cavernous main hall, rows of life-sized holograms pulsed: Atlas, Blaze, Ember, Luna, Nova, Tide, and dozens more. Paw prints projected in gleaming teal onto the floor beneath each name. A central installation drew a constant procession, the Legacy Lattice, a three-dimensional matrix of suspended paw print plaques, each linked by fiber optic strands to data streams showing every mission those dogs had flown on. Visitors tapped screens at each node, one for the South African wildfire where Sahara plowed through ember-choked wind tunnels to guide evacuees, another for a Tokyo subway gas leak where Zen bark punctuated the safe corridor beneath a collapsing ceiling, and dozens more, mapping a living tapestry of service. In one corner, the family pavilion bustled with children learning the AtlasNet creed: I listen, I lead, I return. A spirited terrier named Echo guided them through a mini-maze under simulated fog, barking to trigger floor sensors that lit stepping stones toward a hidden plush figure. Each bark lit up a constellation of LEDs overhead, choreographed to underscore the chain reaction from canine signal to human action. Elsewhere, in the Technology Exchange Forum, engineers unveiled the next generation of harnesses: ultra-thin graphene flex circuits weaving ultrasonic sonar, multispectral gas sensors, biofeedback electrodes, and emerging nanofiltration meshes, all integrated into a single wearable that weighed less than a pound. Side by side, neuroscientists showcased a real-time Neuro-Echo prototype, a soft silicone ear cup capturing raw EEG spikes in canine auditory cortex, translating instinctive danger cry into instantaneous HUD warnings for handlers and commanders. Amid these marvels, Chief Ramirez and Marisol Vega stood before a panel titled, From Bark to Beacon: The Ethics of Canine Global Response. They spoke of the balance between innovation and stewardship, ensuring every dog in the field received not only cutting-edge gear but also the rest, medical care, and unconditional support befitting partners of such singular valor. A standing ovation followed when they announced the Atlas Trust Fund, an endowment guaranteeing lifetime care for every retired Fire Guide K9 and scholarship support for their handlers' families. Outside, at the Memorial Plaza, a spectral fountain of mist formed a living silhouette of Atlas's original maze path, his 90-second run through smoke-choked stairs immortalized in shifting droplets. Visitors crossed bridges with guardrails etched in paw print relief, each step a silent affirmation that no path was too dark when a dog could light it from within. As dusk fell on the summit's final gala, Rowan Cho took the stage alone, her hands folded. Behind her, the Legacy Lattice glimmered like a galaxy of guardians. She spoke of horizons yet unseen, subterranean reactors, off-world habitats, virtual reality rescue training where avatars would learn to follow canine cues before facing real danger. She spoke of research into canine-derived biosensors for early disease outbreak warnings, for chemical attack defense, for environmental collapse alerts, a symphony of applications orchestrated by partnership. Her closing words rang clear: in every generation, we ask ourselves if we can do more. In every generation, a dog dares us to answer with action, not words. Let us be worthy of that dare. The spotlight dimmed to a soft teal. Canine partners lined the stage, tails brimming with patience and pride. Delegates and families rose. A sea of faces and wagging tails united in a promise that presence would persist before catastrophe, through each corridor of smoke, each flooded hall, each abyss of uncertainty, and somewhere beyond the summit walls, in rain-soaked streets and desert dust, maritime decks and Martian domes, dogs stood poised, ears perked, ready to guide every footstep toward safety. The labyrinths of tomorrow would be no match for hearts that had learned to listen first. Beyond the summit's closing applause, the Fire Guide K9 vision spilled into every corner of the globe. Within weeks, pilot teams deployed to the mangrove-choked delta of the Mekong, where rising floodwaters threatened entire villages. There, a brindle mutt named Delta navigated collapsing footpaths and hidden sinkholes, barking twice to signal family clusters huddled on shifting debris rafts, then crouching at each location until boats arrived to ferry them to higher ground. The village headman later declared Delta, our spirit in fur, commissioning a hand-painted mural at the school depicting her issuing those life-saving barks against a backdrop of crashed timber and swollen rice paddies. In the canyoned highlands of Peru, Andean communities embraced the Fire Guide ethos in landslide rescues. A sturdy Mastiff cross, Kia, became the first canine certified in the seismic shift program, trained to recognize the faint, subaudible quivers of recent soil slips. When a 6.2 magnitude aftershock roiled a remote mountainside, Kia padded through thorn scrub to locate 3 herders buried by earth and rubble, her tail thumping each victim's position to a team of geologists who lifted stones with mechanical arms. Newsreels showed Kia slipping between broken boulders as if guided by an unseen map. Eyes aglow in thermal scope as her nose charted micro-vibrations no seismometer could catch. The program's tentacles extended inward as well. In inner-city neighborhoods plagued by apartment fires too small to warrant full alarm dispatch, garbage cans, curling e-cigarettes, faulty wiring, teams of volunteer handlers with backyard dogs formed the Community Canine Alert Network. Children learned to recognize specific bark patterns, 2 short yips for "help coming," 1 drawn-out howl for "stay clear," embedding the Fire Guide protocols into block parties and block watch phone trees. Stories poured in. Toddlers lulled from sleep by their family dog's bark alert. Panicked grandparents guided down smoke-filled hallways by their terrier's yowl. Neighbors huddled under bay windows listening as bark print-enabled cameras streamed tactical guidance to arriving crews. In the research quarters of Diesel Carter's Final Frontier initiative, teams prepared to test canines in microgravity aboard the International Space Station's new multi-purpose module. A cadre of Shiba Inu mixes, genetically identified as Edgemark Delta carriers, underwent parabolic flight trials, learning to mark air vent leaks of simulated toxic gases. Their barks interpreted by onboard systems as emergency commands to seal modules and raise shield protocols. The PR footage of zero-G pups, barking, commands into floating speakers captivated millions. Yet the science held promise for lunar bases and far-flung orbital stations where no human would be first to smell danger. And through it all, the guiding fires of memory burned brightest in Crestview Heights. Each autumn, on the anniversary of Atlas's inaugural rescue, the community gathered at the Memorial Plaza. Lanterns flickered, reflections dancing across rippling fountains shaped like paw prints. Handlers walked alongside the first Fire Guide recruits, children now grown into their own training harnesses, each taking turns reading aloud from the Atlas Codex. A bound volume of stories, sketches, and poems chronicling every dog-led rescue from the humblest smoke alarm to the grandest global deployment. When the final name, Atlas, was read, a hush fell, and thousands lit lanterns in unison, sending a collective glow upward as if guiding old friends home. In the quiet that follows every final chapter, however, there is always the next beginning. Somewhere, an untrained street dog with a keen nose and a trusting heart tugs at a leash. Ready for the call, fire chiefs draft new protocols for chemical threats yet unimagined. Engineers prototype harnesses that translate canine neural impulses faster than any code. Children practice sit-signal drills in backyards, laughter mixing with purpose. And around the world's ceaseless arc of sunrises and sirens, the Fire Guide legacy endures, a testament that whenever crisis coils its smoke around doorways, a dog's bark will ring clear, lighting a path where humans can follow. Presence before catastrophe, etched in paw prints across every continent, will keep leading us forward into every next maze, every next dawn.